MPs' attempts to stop no deal next week depend on a small group of Conservative backbenchers. If they rebel against their government, Boris Johnson could well be defeated. But the price of rebellion could be their political careers. In Westminster, the group, which includes a number of former ministers, is known as the Gawkwood Squad. So it's fitting that we're joined by the former Justice Secretary, David Gauke. Very good morning to you. Look,
good morning.
Just to clarify, in all of this, in terms of this suspension, this prorogation of Parliament, is there anything illegal or unconstitutional about it?
I think some of the language has been a little over the top. I don't think this constitutes a coup, but I do think it's wrong. I think we are entering into a period which is crucial for this country. We have got big decisions to make, and the government should be scrutinised by Parliament. So whether that's the preparations for no deal or the attempts to reach a deal, Parliament should be scrutinising what the government is doing, and Parliament needs to be sitting to do that. And in fact, I think Parliament should be sitting more days over the next few weeks than it would normally do, not fewer. So I think it is wrong to have suspended Parliament for that 5-week period. I mean, I know this is a matter in front of the courts. It may well be that legally the government is entitled to do so, but I think as a matter of judgment, Parliament should be sitting throughout September and October, given the particular circumstances that we're in.
Yet that wasn't going to be the case as far as we understood it. Conference season is underway. I mean, the message from Number 10 is actually this is only affecting 4 or 5 days of Parliament sitting.
I think the likelihood is that, given a widespread sense that Parliament should be sitting during these crucial weeks in late September and early October, I think the likelihood is that Parliament would have sought to ensure that there were extra days that Parliament was sitting during the conference recess period. And one of the reasons why I think the government has done that is to close that possibility off. And I do think that in our system, whereby government is held to account, where ministers are held to account by Parliament, that's what should happen. I was a minister for 9 years. I know it can be frustrating to be held to account by Parliament, but that is part of the job, and that's what should be happening over the course of the next few weeks.
Isn't there an argument to be made? It is being made, and you will have heard it many times, that says in all of this, we've had this huge democratic process of which Parliament agreed that they would listen to the will of the people. Nothing's happened in 3 years. You've not been able to agree a withdrawal agreement in the House of Commons. If Boris Johnson did not take this action to, ultimately hinder people trying to stop us leaving with a no-deal Brexit, then in fact we'd end up just remaining. We wouldn't be able to enforce the will of the people.
Well, first of all, I regret the fact that Parliament did not support the withdrawal agreement. I voted for it 3 times. Had my way prevailed, we would have left the European Union 5 months ago. So I'm not someone who is wanting to frustrate the referendum result. I want us to leave the European Union, but I want us to do so with a deal. Because without that, frankly, our departure will be very different from the prospectus that was put to the British people in the 2016 referendum campaign, where what was said is that we would be able to leave in a smooth and orderly way. We would have a deal. We wouldn't have tariffs and quotas. We'd be able to trade with the European Union just as we have done up until now. A no-deal Brexit, if we're looking at the substance, will be of a very different nature, and it will have an impact on people's jobs and livelihoods, living standards, our security, and I think the integrity of the United Kingdom, because I think it will encourage, for example, Northern Ireland to unite with the Republic of Ireland, and it will encourage separatists in Scotland. So this is a very, very bad outcome for the country, and I don't think it has a mandate from the 2016 referendum, and I don't think it should happen unless Parliament consents to it.
Are you going to be seeing the Prime Minister tomorrow?
Well, I think it's been reported there is a meeting, that is true, so I will have an opportunity to speak to the Prime Minister tomorrow.
And to say what?
Well, I want to hear from him as to what is his plan to deliver a deal. When are we putting forward proposals to deal with this backstop issue, which is the one issue he has identified as the problem within the withdrawal agreement. I want to hear how he's going to address that, and I want to hear how he's plans to deliver the legislation, if we get a deal, by the 31st of October, because at the moment, frankly, I can't see how he's got time to do that.
This is where we end up in a whole world of contradiction, though, isn't it? In the sense that you say you want to see a deal, you want to hear from the Prime Minister tomorrow how he's going to achieve a deal. There is an argument to be made that says if you then try to thwart a no-deal Brexit, as many people are trying to do, in which he appears to be trying to avoid, then you actually stop him getting a deal.
No, I don't agree with that, and I think it is worth looking. What are the things that are stopping us getting a deal? First of all, everybody agrees that there shouldn't be a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, but given our plans in terms of leaving the customs union and so on, we need to find a practical way to ensure that a hard border isn't necessary. Now, Boris Johnson doesn't like the plans in the withdrawal agreements on that, but if he's got an alternative, then he should put that forward. And if he's got an alternative that is workable, I will fully support it and I will vote for it. But first of all, we need to have those plans. Second, we need to have a realistic plan to get the legislation through the House of Commons. We've got to have the time, and we've also got to make sure that some of my colleagues don't say, well, it's not just the backstop, it's something else, and we're still not going to support it. And I think this idea that the threat of no deal is going to make the European Union member states move dramatically, I'm afraid, I think is a bit of a fantasy. The European Union member states know that no deal will have a bigger impact on us than it will on them. I think we just have to face facts about that. And they are not going to move their position so that we end up with needing a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic.
OK, so on the basis that you're not going to, which is unlikely that you're going to hear anything from the Prime Minister that's going to completely satisfy you tomorrow, what are the plans for the coming week? What can you do to try to work and legislate within Parliament to stop this no deal happening?
Well, I don't want to get into too many details about that. There's obviously quite a lot of speculation about it, about seizing the order paper and then taking legislation through. My view is that it is important that Parliament is not excluded from this process, and that we shouldn't allow the government just to sort of run the clock down and take us out without a deal. And I fear that that is the direction that we're going in. I think it's going to be hard to get
with respect, you say you don't want to get into too much detail, but in fact, it's the detail that people need on this, isn't it? Are you going to try and, in effect, force through an extension?
Well, I think the detail will become very apparent in the next few days. But I think the important thing is that Parliament should not be excluded from this process. As I say, I don't believe that no deal has a mandate from the 2016 referendum. I don't think it's got the support of Parliament, but I think Parliament does have to be still part of this process, and I don't think it should be excluded. And the problem is that if we don't act in this week, I think it's likely that Parliament will be excluded from this process. Personally, I would have been happier to have left this for another few weeks. Let's see how the negotiations were progressing. Let's see the government's plans on this. But the fact is that now that Parliament is essentially only going to be sitting this week, and then by the time we come back in mid-October, it will be too late for Parliament to take any effective action to prevent no deal. So the choice for Parliament seems to be very clear. If it's going to take action, it needs to take action in the next few days.
But when we talk about the Galquid squad, as it were, it seems like you haven't got a clear idea of exactly what you want to achieve in the time that you do have available.
Well, from my perspective, I want us to leave with a deal. I think that is a better outcome than either failing to deliver the referendum result or leaving with no deal.
But what action are you going to take to stop us leaving without a deal on October the 31st?
Well, that I think will become clearer as we set out the legislation this week, assuming that we get the votes to take that forward.
If you get those votes through, as you say, but I mean, effectively, people will look at this and say, well, the only real option is to force the Prime Minister to apply for an extension.
Well, I think if we are not ready to leave because we haven't got a deal on the 31st of October, then we shouldn't leave on the 31st of October. That's absolutely right. I think we do have to demonstrate, or we may well need to be flexible on this. if we can get a deal by the 31st of October, if the Prime Minister comes back and he's got legislation he can get through in that time, I will support it. I'm not sure that every Conservative MP can say that, but I will certainly support him if he gets a deal. But if he doesn't get a deal, the responsible course of action would be to extend Article 50 and seek to address these issues in the time afterwards.
So you are, in that sense, you are pretty well aligned with Labour and with what Keir Starmer's put forward.
Well, I believe that the right course of action is to get a deal, and that's where there is perhaps a difference with me and the Labour Party, and I've consistently voted for a deal, whereas the Labour Party, by and large, has opposed it. But do I think the responsible course of action is to leave without a deal on the 31st of October? No, I don't.
Are you prepared to lose the party whip on this? Because there are reports in the paper today that those Conservative MPs who rebel could lose the whip. Are you prepared to do that?
Well, I've seen those reports. I mean, if it is the position now that defying a whip on a European vote is a matter that you lose the whip for the Conservative Party, then I think there's quite a lot of Conservative MPs who, over the recent months, would have lost the whip. But sometimes there is a point where it is you have to judge between your own personal interests and the national interest, and the national interest has to come first. But I hope it doesn't come to that, and I hope that cooler and calmer heads will look at this and think that trying to split the Conservative Party in this way is not a sensible way forward for the Conservative Party or indeed for the country.
One of your colleagues, Oliver Letwin, has said, in effect, time isn't the issue here when it comes to sorting this out. It's getting a majority that will back this. If that doesn't happen, and you don't get this through, would you then look at supporting a vote of no confidence in the government if that is brought forward by the Labour Party?
Well, the position I have consistently said is that the country faces two big risks, a crash out on the 31st of October or a Jeremy Corbyn government. I don't want to do anything that would facilitate a Jeremy Corbyn government. Indeed, one of my worries about a no-deal Brexit is that it will create the chaos in which Jeremy Corbyn could win a general election. So I don't want him to become Prime Minister.
But isn't that part of the argument that some people would say, well, you say you want to do everything to stop a no-deal Brexit, but you're not prepared to do that, to support him getting into number 10, even if just for a very short period of time? I
don't believe that Jeremy Corbyn is fit to be Prime Minister, and I don't want to facilitate that.
OK. David Gaunt, very good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.